Mm. This is going to be a sensational conversation today because, money just is. Money is one of the topics that, for whatever reason, like societally, we have been told and taught and indoctrinated into believing has to be this very high sensation conversation. So I totally get it if you're like, I cannot be present for this conversation, catch the replay. 2 seconds here. Okay, great. So like I said, if you're here live, let me know in the comments. I think everything's working on my end anyways. Hopefully you can hear me. Okay. Hello, hello. It's been a while since I've done a Facebook live stream, actually. I think it's been actually just a while in general. And it's actually been a while since I've been online teaching at all. Because if you haven't noticed, I moved to Quebec. And in moving to Quebec, oh wait, we have some comments. Okay, great. Okay. In moving to Quebec, obviously it took a big commitment on my side. For the last 2 years, have been living in rural BC in my childhood home where my payments to on all my debts was very little. I never really had to worry about a landlord. I just had to worry about updates to my home and, doing life. And I have to say, I'm very grateful for that opportunity because it allowed me to grow my business to what it is today. It allowed me to really take care of myself. And I mean that in terms of allowing myself to feel the broad range of emotions that I had rather than stuff them down and leave them unaddressed like I had done in the corporate world. But it really gave me the space to simply discover and unearth who I actually am through some less than ideal circumstances. So to catch you up, for 2 years, 2.5 years almost, I have been living without running water. I have been living on my own up until, end of November when my mom joined me, but I was living very, very minimal. My expenses were small. I was very tight with my money because I needed to be able to trust myself with it. And so I trusted myself first with tending to my debts on a regular basis. I trusted myself with paying for upgrades to my home. Now, at a certain point in time, not having running water, it becomes a spiritual practice. As they say, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. And I was literally doing that. And obviously now I'm enjoying the fact that I can do my laundry while working and not have to go to a laundromat, but nonetheless, here we are. And so I was doing that every day, hauling water, bringing in the water, getting electric pumps from Amazon, getting a well dug, doing all of this stuff to just make my life function. And then in December of 2021, I hit a breaking point. And I was like, I'm done. I'm just so done. I'm done having to do special things so my toilet will flush properly. I am done hauling water every week. I am done going to the laundromat and spending $140. I'm just done. I'm done. And I think a lot of the time we get used to those spots of I'm just done with this, but then we continue living that way for a really long time and we don't actually commit to the new step that's being asked of us. And so in the process of me feeling completely done, I was like, I need to move. And there was an awareness that I had worked so hard in my life that I deserve a bubble bath at the end of the day. Like I at a very minimum, I deserve that. And it was interesting because I caught myself in conversations with people who lived very similar to me at that time, and finding the justification of how living that way was fine and it was appropriate and it was okay. And I remember asking my uncle, and I was like, well, how long am I expected to prove myself for? And I remember him just like kind of looking at me. I was like, because I could do this for the rest of my life. This could be my reality. So how long am I going to prove that I can hack this, that I can handle myself, that I can tolerate turmoil, that I can go through anything? How long am I going to have to maintain this narrative that patience and commitment look like this? How long do I have to keep pushing myself to maintain this story? And no one had an answer for me, because the truth of that matter is that you can go validating every narrative of your life for the rest of it. If you have the narrative that you have to prove yourself, then you could continue proving yourself for the rest of your life. And for 2.5 years, I had proved it. I had proved that I could leave my hometown, go to Vancouver for 10 years, even if it was on a line to stay for 10. I could prove that I could go back home to my hometown and stay for eternity, even when it's unaligned. And see, that's the crazy thing, is like, we can prove all we want, even in unalignment, even in misalignment, even in places that are just truthfully not right for us. We can gruel through anything. And it's kind of the beauty of being human, is that we're just so infallible that way. We could continue doing something for so long, and eventually it'll all kind of work out. One of my favorite quotes is from a movie called, or a TV show called Dirk Gently, who's, if you haven't seen the show, it's hilarious. But there's a scene where Dirk is kind of talking to himself, and he goes, did I do everything wrong? Yes. Did everything go wrong? Yes. Did it all work out? Kind of. And that's effectively how most of us are living our lives. But in December, I just realized that I was done. I was tired of trying to prove that I was able to do all of it, because I had been doing all of it. At what point do you get the certificate that says, okay, you're done? You're never going to be done if you're trying to prove things. And so I remember just sitting down and being like, I have to move. Not because it's the easy choice, right? There's a lot of people who'd be so attached to being like, oh, that's the easy way out. What am I trying to prove here, right? And it wouldn't be easy, right? Leaving my childhood home again, leaving my dad, who I just built a brand new relationship with again, leaving my mom, who I just got to spend more time with again. You know, I had healed so much in my life over the last 2 years that this idea of me leaving it behind was actually heartbreaking. And so the choice to move wasn't because I was running from anything. It just wasn't true for me to stay. And I knew that I needed to move, but where to was a bigger question. And so I just sat on it, right? Like, I was just like, okay, I know that I need to move, and that's it. What else do I do from here? And I woke up one morning and I heard the word Montreal. And so it's been really interesting to see people say, like, Steph, why Montreal? Because then my response is, if I told you, you may or may not believe me, but any answer to why is not going to be sufficient for the part of you that's asking why. Because most people kind of already had a narrative in their story, in their head, about why I was moving to Montreal. People ask me, oh, do you have a boyfriend there? Oh, is your job there? Oh, did you buy a house there? Like, there had to be an external reason to validate why I was moving to Montreal. Now, if you know anything about me, I actually am very unreasonable. Everything I do in my life, I do without reason. And that is most of the reason of why people enjoy watching it unfold. I don't wait for an external circumstance to validate the thing that I know inside. I'm just like, okay, I'm going to follow it. I'm going to follow this thing inside me that says this is the journey for me. When I moved to Vancouver originally after high school, that was a logical choice. It was, I know I got to move, right? That was the initial thing. I know I want to go to school. Okay, but I'll go to Vancouver because my family's down there and that makes the most sense. And, you know, I can live with my grandparents and da, 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 da. But if I actually listened to the deeper thing, I wanted to apply to University of Western Ontario or McGill, which is in Montreal. But my family couldn't afford the applications to those universities. My mom really didn't want me moving across the country at 17. And so Vancouver was the logical choice. But beyond that, once I got into my adulthood, everything I did was without reason, right? Steph, why are you going on a road trip across all 50 states to finish seeing all 50 states? I don't know, just because. And I would make up reasons, right? Because again, not having a reason upset people. It was really hard for people to sit with the reality that someone could do something just because they wanted to. And so with nearly every person who asked me, there was like a new answer, just some sort of bullshit response. Like to some people, I would say, oh, well, my dad had seen 37, so I want to see more than him. It's a little bit of a competition. To others, I would say, oh, I am going to go visit family and friends. To others, I would say, you know what, I just need some soul searching, whatever. It didn't really matter, but none of that was true. It was just because I fucking wanted to. If I wanted to see family and friends, I could have just flown to New York and Florida. If I wanted to do some soul searching, I could have been like every other coach and gone to fucking Bali. I could have done anything, but I chose that as the thing that I wanted to do because I woke up one day and I was like, I want to do that. So back in December, I sat with the idea that I wanted, or the truth that I needed to move. The word Montreal came in and I was like, I'm going to trust that too. Well, just like any big desire that would change your life effectively, I completely collapsed around it. Because the idea of moving to Montreal meant that I had to leave the security of my house where I didn't have to pay rent to accept paying rent that was twice, sometimes 3 times more than I have ever paid in my whole fucking life. I had never paid 4 figures for rent. Up until this point, I have either paid less than $300 on debt payments in exchange for my home. I've either paid $400 to have a basement suite with a roommate, $700 to have a garden suite in North Burnaby, which was like my favorite home ever. $850 to live in New Westminster with like the best roommate on the planet. I had never spent more than $900 a month on rent, let alone twice that. And so the idea of me spending that much had me go into complete collapse. And in the process of collapsing around the desire rather than opening to it, I got really sick. So after spinning out about how would I be able to afford moving to Montreal, I ended up getting COVID. And then while I had COVID, I was irritable, I was falling apart, I was getting into fights with my mentor and my best friends and retreating from everyone until finally I just realized I was wasting so much of my energy fighting the thing that wanted to come through me. I didn't get sick because I was partying on a weekend. I never left my house. I got sick because my ego needed to get so sick it would die so I could actually commit to this next move in my life. I needed to completely get to a state of surrender so that changing my life from what I've known it as to something that I have never experienced before was even possible. So January, February, and some of March, I was so sick. I lost my voice. I couldn't really work. I had to risk losing more money because I couldn't really serve every day. There was a part of me that would look for apartments in Halifax because I was like, oh, it's going to be cheaper in Halifax. And then I would never find anything I really liked. And I was like, what is going on here? Like, if it's true to move and it's true to move to Montreal, why am I dodging it? I'm dodging it by getting sick. I'm dodging it by looking at other places to move. Why can't I just sit with like, I'm going to move to Montreal? And so that's how I started speaking about it. I said, I am moving to Montreal. And everyone's like, oh, when are you doing that? I was like, oh, summertime, spring, summer, I'm not sure, but I am moving. What was interesting about this is that committing to your desires and embodying the person who actually fulfills them calibrates your whole life. And unfortunately, it also means that you will have people leave your life. When I would tell people I am moving to Montreal, there was two responses I got. One was, I'm so proud of you. That's great. I can't wait to visit you. Oh my God, you're going to love it over there. Yes, this feels so true. This is so you. I'm like stoked. Which part of Montreal are you moving? Or the alternative, why the fuck are you moving to Montreal? And the people who responded with the latter broke my heart almost every time, because up until this point, these were the people I thought supported me. I thought were my friends. I thought were family. I thought were in my corner for my life. And promptly in that response alone, I recognized that, wow, these are not going to be the people that are going to surround me in this new phase. These are not going to be the people who are going to be able to be around me at the version of me that must exist for this reality to take place. The beauty of that is that I also got to see who was a fuck yes to my new level, who was going to be coming along with me, who was totally in my corner, even if it made them uncomfortable. They're like, I see this for you. It makes sense. I'm so excited for you. Let's celebrate this choice. And so those relationships got stronger and they got more fortified. And so in this place of losing friendships and relationships, I gained stronger ones. So I am moving to Montreal. In the middle of March, I was like, well, where am I moving? And I decided to get really specific about the desire itself. And I was like, okay, I am moving to Montreal. I've got that clear. My body is no longer super fucking inflamed. And I'm good to go now. Like, I'm so ready for this. Let me get really specific about the desire. And so because my body was already accepting that I was moving, I could now go to the next layer. And the next layer was, where am I moving to? And I listed out my apartment, my dream apartment. And if you recall, if you've been following me for a while, I did write a post about like, here's all of the things. And I think it's actually still pinned to my Facebook profile, so you can go read that. Because my specifics were, I wanted a bakery nearby. I wanted to be able to wake up in the morning and get a latte. I wanted to be near water. I wanted to be able to take Roxy for a walk. I wanted to be able to have Roxy in my house, right? Like, I wanted it to be dog approved, but like large dog approved. I got audacious enough to say, I want a dog park nearby. I want a dog groomer nearby. I want to be able to like walk to like a gastropub and like have a really awesome date, even with myself. And so I wrote out this list of just like wild things that if I could have my way, what would I have? And then I just, again, sat with it, because receiving reception, being the embodiment of the life you desire, means you have to have the capacity for it. And so if you want to receive what it is that you want, you have to have the capacity to hold it. So the capacity to hold my desire to move, phase 1, my desire to capacity to hold my move to Montreal, phase 2, my desire and capacity to move to Montreal into the apartment I desire, phase 3, actually receiving that specific thing was phase 4. Because by the end of April, I was like, you know what? I'm ready to look. I'm ready to go seek an apartment. Because in the midst of all of this, I got like 6 brand new clients. So for me, healing from COVID, totally letting my ego fall apart, totally dying, coming into March, sitting with, okay, I'm going to move to Montreal. Yep. Okay. But where am I going to move specifically? Like the visualization of it, not necessarily the mapping of it. And I got real specific, and it was like, okay, I think I'm actually ready for this, because in the midst of all doing that, I got 6 new clients. I'm making more money now. I crossed my financial ceiling that I've been in for like 7 months. Let's look. And so I opened up Facebook Marketplace, because that's what you do. And I just looked. That was it. Now, I do want to say that, again, when I deal with money stuff, I deal with my nervous system. And so I had already felt in my nervous system, what is the maximum that I am actually, my body is willing to fork over? Okay. Now, you might notice that in your body, your body is okay with like spending $900 in rent, but your mind is like, that's too fucking much. I'm not talking about the mind's response here. I'm talking with like your body, that your body still feels safe to spend that much money before your brain is just like, let's logic you into other thinkings. I still felt safe up to, I think it was like 700 or 1750 was like, anything below that, my system's like, yeah, this is smooth. I have no problem. Anything above that, I'll completely collapse. Now, if it is 1750, like my brain is going to have a lot of chatter, but my physical body will still feel safe. Okay. And so I was looking online and I found this apartment and it was beautiful. And like, it almost looked staged because it was so gorgeous, but like staged by a hipster because it was so pretty. And I was like, oh my God, I want this apartment. I want this apartment. I don't know why, but I want this apartment. And so I messaged this guy and I was like, hey, is the apartment large dog friendly? And he said, yep, you can have up to 2 dogs. I was like, no, Roxy's plenty. And from there, I think we talked for like another day, just like about the apartment. And then he just ghosted me. And I was like, the fuck is that? Like, oh my God, the feeling in my body was like, I was so close to having exactly what I wanted. Where did he go? And so that's when actually I wrote out this post that's now pinned to my profile. Was it rather than gripping into him fulfilling this desire, this guy transferring his lease over to me, rather than that happening, I was like, wait a minute. The fact that this apartment, out of all other apartments, made itself known is such a fucking magical piece. Because this apartment specifically had a bakery downstairs, a pizza place downstairs, a waxing place downstairs, a dog park down the street. It allowed dogs. It had an in-suite laundry, a bathtub. It had all of the things that I wanted. And so what I knew was that it's like, okay, this is the right alignment. It's not exactly right yet, but it is the right alignment. And so I just accepted it. I was like, okay, this guy isn't the one that needs to fulfill my desire. It's either this or something better, because this is already matching all the things that I need. Great. And so I just sat with it. I was like, okay. Within 24 hours, I found another apartment in the same fucking building. So it was literally this or the something better. And so immediately I was like, oh my God, the something better, it's coming to me. And so I messaged the person. It was another lease transfer. They ghosted me. Now at this point, this is where people would be like, oh my God, the desire, it's not for me. All of this is wrong. It'll never happen. Blah, 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 blah. And I did that for a moment, don't get me wrong. But then again, I went back to the fact that the something better showed up is huge. The something better is coming. So the something better than the something better, which was better than this, is coming to me. And so I sat with it. And one of the things that I teach inside of bank is reverence and responsibility. So I had reverence for my desire. I respected it rather than completely falling apart around it. And I was responsible for it. So what I ended up doing was I just found the apartment building on Google and contacted the property manager. That's the responsibility piece. And that's often where people get stuck around things like manifestation of desire. You still have to be responsible for it. Like you have to say, hey, I want that thing. I'm actually open to receiving it. Let me show you how. And so let me message the person about the lease transfer. Let me message this person about the lease transfer. You know what? Fuck it. I want my own lease. And within 12 hours, I got a south-facing bed suite with a kitchen island on the 7th floor in room 707, which sevens had been following me for a while. And it was perfect. And so I was like, oh my God, let's set up a viewing. We set up the viewing. The rent less than what my nervous system felt safe with. So here I was, I had already grew my capacity to receive the fact that I was going to move to Montreal. I grew my capacity to receive my desire for my ideal apartment. I received the amount of money that I'm willing to spend, and gave myself like a little nervous system profit range, you know? I don't have to spend all the way to where my nervous system feels safe just before it breaks down. I get to spend less and have all of this. Amazing. And so within a couple hours after that, I signed my first lease. Yeah, I've never had to sign a lease before. I paid my first month's rent and then it was official. I'm moving to Montreal. And then I was like, oh my God, how do I move to Montreal? How the fuck am I going to get across the country? Now, I'm going to be fully transparent. The process of moving across the country is not like moving in the same province. One, you have to consider duration of how long it's going to take for you to get there. Two, you have to consider cost. Three, you have to consider the actual like planning of it. So for example, my original thought was I would drive and I would take my truck and I would drive. Parents weren't too proud of that one because my truck is, how do I say this? Too old, too battered to make it across the country, essentially. And so, my dad suggested, well, why don't you try flying? And so I looked it up. I was like, oh, flights to Montreal, pretty cheap. Let me see about Roxy. Well, getting Roxy on a plane was risky. It would cost a lot of money just in terms of getting her a kennel that she would actually never use again because I don't have her in a kennel at home. She respects my house. And by respects, I mean thinks the couch is hers. And it just wasn't feasible for me because I came to the spot where I was like, if I spend all of that money, so that's like $2,000 just to fly me and Roxy. When I get there, I'm only going to have like 2 suitcases of my clothes. I won't have anything. And I was a no to that. I was an absolute no to not being able to bring some of my stuff. And so I was like, I'm not going to spend that. So then I thought, well, why don't I fly ground ship Roxy? I was still faced with the same issue of not having any of my stuff, but I was like, at least that way, I wouldn't have to organize myself around the flights and have that be really pricey. Well, they called me and they're like, that's going to be about $2,500. And I was like, no, I'm not spending $2,500 just to transfer Roxy, plus spend all the money I would have to like start my life over, right? So I had accepted that I would be starting my life over in Montreal, but there was a certain range that my nervous system was okay with spending for that even to happen, okay? So I didn't do that. So I decided, fuck it, I'm gonna take my truck. And I got to the spot of, if my truck blows up between here and Montreal, I'll deal with it when I get there. I'm a resourceful gal, I'll figure it out. But I gotta tell you, when I get to that place of like, I just need to follow the thing, and if a problem comes, I'll deal with it then, is probably the most functional way I operate through life, because problems very rarely happen when I think that way, but they almost always happen when I think I've avoided the problem. Make sense? Right. So I got in my truck and I decided I was going to move, right? So my lease started July 1st. I wanted to give myself plenty of time to get there. So I left on the 25th, I think, Saturday the 25th. And, up until that point, I was in burst with my mentor. I was trying to pack, like life was just so, time was this very weird construct for me, where it was like, I had plenty of time and I had plenty of money, but then at the same time, it felt like I didn't have enough of it. So I was constantly in this like expansion compression, but like rapidly, almost like you're at the gym. Like I actually felt like I was at a physical gym where every day, multiple times a day, I'd be like, oh, I have plenty. Oh, I don't have enough. I have plenty. I don't have enough. And so it was exhausting. It was like viscerally tiring. And then I left. And I had already accepted that I would be using some of my breathing fund, which is what I call an emergency fund, because you don't require an emergency to use it. But I accepted I would use some of my breathing fund to help fund my transition to Montreal. So that included things like gasoline, that included paying off any debts that I had, because during this time, during my packing and getting ready to leave, I also went to Whitehorse to see my best friend from college. And so it was like, I did a retreat with my mentor. I went to Whitehorse. I was packing, like all of this stuff was happening. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to use my breathing fund to fund this. That way I don't have to stress out about making sales in my business additional to what's already there to fund it. And so I left. Now, if you follow me on TikTok, I did a little like series of like, how much was I spending in gas? Some guys over 40 were really upset because I didn't include my initial tank of gas, which, I mean, it's a weird thing to get upset about, but nonetheless. So during the trip, meaning from June 25th to June 29th, 30th, when I got to Montreal, I had spent like $1,300 in gasoline alone, which is fine because up until that point, my system, I was like mentally and viscerally, like somatically prepared to spend somewhere closer to $1,700. That's what I had prepared myself for. I was like, yeah, you know what? $1,700 in gas, anything below that, like I'm fine. So the fact that I spent 13, again, gave my nervous system that like space for profit. It was like, I could have spent another $400 and I would have been fucking fine. There would have been no issues. My system would have been fine. Now, again, I want to separate your brain and how your brain will go and be like, yeah, but did you have that money? It's not about that right now. I'm talking specifically for the body because the body has its own reaction to money. Your nervous system is your wallet. And so if your nervous system is compressed, it doesn't even matter if you have money in the bank, you won't spend it, okay? So, which leads me to like the conversation I actually want to have, even though I've been talking for like however long I've been talking for, half an hour, I think. How much money did I actually spend last month? And so this actually came out because I was having a conversation on TikTok again, because it's been a great space for like coming up with content ideas and things that I actually want to talk about and teach on. And what I had realized was that a lot of people who teach about money, they teach about earning money, which is important. And don't get me wrong, there's more stuff about earning money that I will be teaching. But when they talk about spending, the conversation around spending is like, spend less than you make. It's never about make as much as you need. It's always about use a budget. So outsource your decisions to an Excel spreadsheet. It's never about desensitizing the sensationalism around spending. Because here's the reality. When I write this caption that says, speaking to how I spent 10K, part of you is watching this because I said I spent $10,000 last month. Like, admit it. Just admit it to yourself. It's hot. It's sensational. It's like, it's juicy. Like, how the fuck did this woman do it? In fact, I spent over 10K last month is the truth of it. 10K is just a round number that I get to use the letter K in. The fact that we spend money at all is so sensational. We have conversations, entire connection points based on how much did we spend on a car or how little did we spend? So the conversation around spending is already so polarizing that it only reinforces most of the narratives that we have. Case in point, when I was first looking at apartments, I remember showing my mom an apartment and her being like, what the fuck? Because the amount of rent was so out of my mother's nervous system range and out of her mental concept of like, that's an appropriate amount to spend. You know, even growing up, I remember my grandmother, like, she'd be like, well, how much are you spending in rent? I'd be like, $400. And she's like, that's too much. And it's wild, but like at the same time, that's how she was oriented. And so I realized I want to actually desensitize or desensationalize, I think is the better way of speaking to it, what we spend, because money is just numbers. It's nothing, it doesn't mean something about you. It doesn't mean something about your potential. It is just numbers. And the reality is, if you are someone who wants to have more money, it does take more spending, more investing in yourself. And, you know, and I want to speak, there's a nuance here because it's never, you need to spend money to make money. It's you need to spend aligned and reverent money to make aligned and reverent money. Okay, because you could spend money on Birkin bags and still have nothing to show for it, except for those Birkin bags. So give me a second. So on TikTok, I realized I wanted to start this series where I would share every month how much I spent in the previous, just so we could have a conversation around it. And so you can actually see your own reactions to someone else spending money. The way that you react to being like, oh my God, 10K is so much money. I could never spend that much money. Or if you're like, oh my God, 10K, easy peasy. Like, or if you're just like, oh, cool, she spent 10K because that's true for her to spend 10K. So we're actually gonna go through it. So I actually made a spreadsheet that's I'm gonna keep kind of tracking all of this on. So I'll give you the specifics of what I spent last month because I think it's really fun. So last month, my business expense, I'm gonna give you my business expenses as well because they're pretty standard, but I'm a self-employed solo entrepreneur. So everything that I invest in my business is 100% tax deductible, but I keep it separate from my personal expenses because I was an accountant and I don't want to stress myself out when it comes to tax season, you know? So in my business last month, I spent $3,522.13. So that is everything from the software I use to the mentors that I have to the programs that I'm a member of. That's everything that I spent last month. Generally, it does go between $3,500 to $4,500, depending on what's happening that month. So that's what I spent last month. My personal expenses last month were $6,878.94. So I spent, twice as much in my life than I did in my business. And what's beautiful about this is that for a really long time, I spent significantly more in investing in my business, and I didn't feel safe enough to spend on myself. And so the fact that I'm spending more on my life actually feels really good because I can tell that there's some change happening. Like, yeah, I'm still investing in my business, $3,500 a month, no big deal. But like, wow, like I almost spent $7,000 on my life, on backing my desire to move to Montreal, on backing my desire to see my best friend in Whitehorse, on backing my desire on attending a 4-day online retreat, on backing my desire to go have a massage, of whatever it is. I did that for myself. Amazing. And now, even in me saying these words, and I want you to take a moment, you can drop it in the comments, like, how does that feel in your body? The fact that anyone would spend, $3,500 in their business and nearly $7,000 on themselves, like, you probably already have some judgments come up, or maybe you have some internal body sensations. Take stock of that. Because what I spend doesn't actually impact you, but it is impacting you. It's taking up your space in your mind or in your body of comparison, of really thinking, am I doing enough? Is she doing too much, right? And so the total that I spent last month was $10,401.07. So when I did the total this morning, I was like, oh, well, I need to be able to give people context as to how did I get there? And it was like, oh, well, I went to Whitehorse, I moved to Montreal, and that's excluding my investments, right? Like I invest every month into my investment accounts. And so I excluded those entirely. This is just spending. And there was this part of me that was like, I need to justify why I spent $10,000. And totally context is important. I did have to start everything over. So in June, I had to buy a new bed. So it would be ready for me in July. So yeah, that is a portion of my expenses. The gasoline is a portion of my expenses. The food along the way is a portion of my expenses. Some of the other things, like my standard things that I pay for, like my student loan that I'm still paying on, my brewery. When I go to a brewery, it's on there, right? My property taxes, things like that did get paid as well. But then I also had things like a lot of gasoline, obviously, but like, what else did I have here? Oh, souvenirs from my parents from Whitehorse, Roxy going to the vet. Like there was definitely some expenses that just made sense, Now, at the same time, there's definitely things that weren't so reverent, like what was the one that I saw where I was like, ugh. Oh, like one of the hotels I stayed at while I was on my way here, it was awful. And I was like angry and resentful. I was like, for fuck's sakes, like I shouldn't have paid $200 to stay at this fucking hotel. It's a shitty hotel. I had an awful sleep. And there was like all this resentment built up. But then at the same time, and I say this to the members of bank as well, like you can have retroactive reverence, like a deep embodied sense of respect for your life, because the alternative to me not spending the $200 at a shitty hotel was me sleeping in my truck. That was the alternative that night. And so while it sucked to misallocate my resources and not get the full meal deal, like the whole beauty of the thing, it was still better than the alternative, right? The alternative would be sleeping in my truck, yeah, saving $200, but I'd wake up even more exhausted, that my body would hurt, that I wouldn't even be able to drive as much the next day because I would just be so tired. So retroactively, I can see that purchase was a deep embodied sense of respect for my life, even though the amount pisses me off when I see it, even though the sleep wasn't that great, it's still significantly better than the alternative. Yeah. And so because I keep my personal life, my expenses for my personal life separate from my business, I can also be really clear in my business of like what needs to stay. So like I can quickly look at my business expenses. I literally have them up on the screen right now. My Zoom, my Mighty Networks, my breath work, my membership to Carly Ray's Flesh and Blood, my payments to my mentor Perry, like, oh, I did have a mistaken transaction here. I should not have spent $30. Oh, no, wait a minute. That is for a charger. Yes, that is right. Canva, Spotify, right? So for me, those are all of my business expenses. I can see it. It's like, yep, that all makes sense. There's nothing that needs to change. Now with my personal expenses, because it's already separate from my business, all I have to do is look at them and be like, yep, that's right. That's right. That's right. My relationship to money, because I'm not like so sensationalized about the dollar value for it entirely, right? The $7,000, I don't get knocked out of consciousness because of the amount of money spent. I get now for me to get knocked out of being in a relationship with my bank statements, I think I would have to be charged for something, like there would have to be a fraudulent expense on my card for me to be like, what the fuck, you know? Because like even right now, like there's a charge for like Flare Direct. And I was like, when I was going through this earlier, I was like, what the fuck is that? And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. Never mind. That's a flight to go see my best friend Leah for her birthday in Vancouver in September, you know, like, oh, right. Like you can take the time and take however long you need to be in relationship to what's actually going on in your account so that you could spend something like $10,000 on the things that are contributing to your life versus not buying the flight to go see Leah in September, not buying food along the way, not buying a hotel so I could have a good night's rest. Before even leaving, things like not buying groceries, things like not buying my parents souvenirs, not paying for my car insurance. Like all of a sudden, when you are sensationalized around the dollar value, the amount of money of something, you will start omitting things you actually need in your life to sustain you, to create the nourishment you need to get to the next stage. If I didn't feed myself on the road, if I didn't get a good night's rest on the road, it is very likely that I would have gotten to a car accident. And I literally would not have made it to the next stage of my life, which would be living in Montreal. And so when I sat here today and I like this morning and I like totaled it up, I was like, I looked at it, I was like, holy fuck. I spent $10,401.07. Like I did that? Me? What? Now, again, part of the reason why I wanted to do this like spending series, and I'm going to be doing it more so on TikTok, is because everyone loves to talk about like, oh my God, I made 7 figures this year. Oh my God, I did a 6-figure month. Woo! And to me, every time I see that, I'm like, but I want to know what you spent. I want to know, what did you buy last month? Who did you pay last month? Because listen, you make 7 figures and you spend 7 figures. Cool. When do you get to live on profit? And really that is the game that I'm here to play. Like I'm getting used to spending more and getting used to making more. And at some point there's going to be, I'm making more. Like, I think I'm breaking even right now. Like I'm I'm not getting excess. Nothing's happening in excess yet. But like my vision and my embodiment for myself is to begin living on profit, meaning that it doesn't matter how much I spend, I'm always making significantly more, right? And I think that's one of the things that people forget is like, you want to have those 5, 6, 7-figure months, but like you need to be able to spend at the levels that create that. No one in the fucking world is investing in their business $5 and making 7 figures in a month. It's just not happening. No one is spending $10 out of their like pocket change to have a 5-figure month. And so desensitizing or desensationalizing, spending money is going to be, it's really intense to have you feel more comfortable with making more money. Because part of the reason why people won't make more money is because they're like, well, I don't want to spend that much. Consider that spending $3,000, like I'm spending $3,500 in my business right now, that may terrify you. That might be like, that is so far out of my fucking range that I'm actually angry now. Well, if that is going to bother you, then making the amount of money that covers that is also going to bother you. If spending $500 in your business bothers you, then making $500 in your business is also going to bother you. Your nervous system needs to be prepared to earn and to spend. It is just the way it goes. It's like it needs to be able to rest and recover as much as it needs to be activated and run. Like our bodies are meant to be fluid and supple and continuously moving in life. And so to have us be stagnant with like, this is how much I'm comfortable with spending, I'm never comfortable with spending anymore, it simply doesn't work. It's not effective and it's not true, right? Like if someone is telling you you need to budget, listen. I think budgets are psychological warfare. I talk about this in bank as well. There are people who have budgets and they're very effective with them. They're like, yeah, I stick to my budget every month. And these people do not feel any more free with money than someone who doesn't use a budget at all. The budget is not your Lord and Savior, okay? It is not Tom Selleck in Hoochie Daddy shorts. Budgets are not here to fix your problems. Budgets are only going to be an extension of how you relate to money, time, and energy already. And that's why bank really isn't a money program. It is a reverence and responsibility program. It's how do you have such a deep respect for yourself that you continue to give yourself everything you need and never sacrifice anything? How do you give yourself enough time to have vacation with your kids and not sacrifice your business? How do you have time away from your business without feeling guilt? How do you have time to yourself without feeling guilty? How do you have energy used for creating your business without feeling like you're sacrificing your heart? I don't believe that we have to sacrifice any of it. I think that it takes a lot of reorientation. And truth be told, a lot of the narratives that people have about time, money, and energy are complete bullshit. And they are fed to us, whether you're even on the side of like, oh, I need to be an entrepreneur, hustle, that's fucking you up. If you're on the like, eat the rich fucking mentality, that's also fucking you up. Every narrative that you have been fed is meant to keep you where you are. Anything other than like, what is it that you want in your life? How do you want to live your life? If it's not that, if it isn't allowing creativity and explosive imagination to being, how do I actually want to live my life? Then it is a narrative that you are being fed. And if it's a narrative that you are being fed, it is intended to keep you where you are. It is not meant to have you move and evolve and shift. You know, I was having, before moving to Montreal, I had a conversation with my dad. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to move to Montreal. And he's like, you don't need to. You don't need to move to Montreal. You're right. I don't need to. I fucking want to. There's the difference, right? And I could have taken his story, his narrative of like, you don't need to do anything. Like, because he's right. I don't need to move to Montreal to grow my business. I don't need to move to Montreal to fall in love. I don't need that. But if I would take that story of I don't need to follow my heart, then I could find myself living a life that wasn't of my own design. And if you look around at the world, that is the pandemic we're all living in. A lot of people living a life not of their own design and being upset and resentful and angry about it and feeling victimized and powerless instead of saying, okay, you know what? I'm in a game and that game has some rules. And if I want to play that specific game, I'm going to play by the rules and I'm going to fuck up all the things that I need to fuck up, or I don't actually want to play in that game and I'm going to create my own game. And knowing that both of those are an option. And I can't be angry at you because you're playing that game, because that game actually has nothing to do with me if I'm over here playing my own game. And so I want to serve as like the permission for you to actually create the life that's like it truly has respect for your innate wealth, your unique and independently determined life. No one is here to force a certain lifestyle on you. No one is here to force a certain income on you either. And so if there is anything in your world that is like, nope, there's a ceiling, there's a glass ceiling, oh my God, baby, if you are in a glass ceiling, it means you're in a solarium. You need to go outside. Like it's not there. It's not there. Everything all these stories are you internalizing someone else's narrative to keep you in the same fucking spot that you're in, or to follow the story that they're building, to have you play their game, right? And I'm just going to go on a mini tangent here, but like even consider the glass ceiling story. That's a narrative for women. Oh, we need to break the glass ceiling. Do we? Do we need to break it? One of my favorite, another book that I love to recommend is called Lean Out. And it's from Marissa Orr. Sorry, it's on my bookshelf. And it was the antithesis to Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In. And one of the questions that she says, she's like, did anyone ask what I wanted? No, there's just this assumption that if you're a woman in the corporate world, that you want to break the glass ceiling, you want more responsibility, you want to become the next CEO. And she's like, but no one's asking if we actually want that. They're just making a general assumption that we all want it, instead of being like, well, no, like I actually would love to just be a mom and, you know, have money to take my kid to ballet. Like, why is that a problem? And it's not. Your journey to wealth means that you have time, money, and energy to afford to live your life, however that looks. And for me, the ability to live my life cost $10,401.07. That's what, and I could afford that. I could afford that financial decision, and I could afford the week of driving, and I could afford the energy it took to invest in this, because I have reverence and responsibility for my innate wealth. And I am not going to allow the narratives of the world to interfere and perpetuate some sort of narrative that keeps me where I don't even want to be. So how did I spend $10,000 last month? I stayed in my own fucking lane. I stayed with myself. I committed to the thing. I trusted myself enough to know I'm going to make all of this work. I'm going to make it work for me in the way that I need it to. And even though I've got angry men on TikTok saying that, no, I need to be making more money to afford that. Meanwhile, they're not fucking me, feeding me, or financing me. I could buy into that and get lost in it, or I can be like, right, my life, my commitment to it is what creates it. So I think I got my point across today. I'm going to leave you guys there. I would love to hear what you're leaving with. You know, if you've watched this entire thing, if you've watched just a piece of it, I will post the replay on YouTube. And this will likely be a continued series of me talking about how much I've spent this last month, and really sharing with you guys my own personal practice, because it can be easy to forget. And I had known, I was like, oh, fuck, I really need to pay attention to how much I spent last month, because I know it's a lot, and I didn't have the specifics. And then today I was like, yeah, I have the specifics now. And like, once I got clear, I was like, oh, this isn't, it's not a big deal at all. Like, cool. So really this series is about showing you how I work with me to make sure that I'm constantly living at the deepest possible alignment to my innate wealth, right? Like, is living in this apartment it for me? Absolutely not. Is living in Montreal it for me? Absolutely not. Your innate wealth is like a spiral. You're only going to access deeper and deeper levels of it, but you have to commit to reverence and responsibility. Without those two things, you're setting yourself up for one of the most painful journeys. And that's why money can be so painful, is that people forget that they have to respect themselves in the process. They have to trust themselves. And they have to be responsible enough to do the research, to back themselves and actually do the thing. Sometimes doing the thing is taking me a nap. Sometimes doing the thing is calling a bank. But doing the resonant thing at the resonant time is kind of the bigger umbrella of reverence and responsibility. It is resonance, and resonance is just an extension of harmony, which is what I serve in general throughout all my programs. Even in the places of turbulence, you can have resonance. Even in things that are deeply crunchy, you can have resonance. You just simply have to find where it is and just follow that thing. So like I said, I'm going to leave you guys there. I would love to hear what you're leaving this with, what lands for you. And the best way to do that is saying, like, you know, when you said this is what came up for me and this is what I'm seeing. If you're in a place where you're like, you know what, let's fucking roll. I'm ready to embody my innate wealth. I'm ready to be reverent and responsible. I'm ready to peel out from those layers of like bullshit narratives that aren't fucking true in the first place. I'm going to highly, highly encourage you to apply to bank. Okay. I cannot recommend this enough, not because it's my program, but like as a living, breathing practitioner of the work that I teach, when you wake up in the day and you say, you know what, my life fucking matters enough to be respectful of it and to be responsible for it, the only thing that can happen is wealth show up. The only thing that can happen is life calibrate itself to the person you are when you do that. That's all that'll happen. So I'll leave you there. I'll leave the comments or the link in the comments for you guys to apply for Ready. So when you apply, it is an experiential application. I've just kind of changed it up a little bit. It's going to take you through an experience that I teach everybody, which is called your expenditure range. It'll teach you how to be in your body and being like, well, what is your range? Like, where are you right now? And then it also is going to teach you a little bit about what we do inside of bank in the process of things. At the very end, if you're dependent on what your application says, I might call you and say, hey, like, let's just jump on a call and talk about some stuff. If it's a right resonant fit, I'll invite you to the program. If not, I might have some suggestions for other work. So there is no downside to applying. So I'm gonna leave you guys there. I love you all, and I wish you the most rich and wet life ahead of you. Mwah.